Hello, welcome to Intuitive Insights. I am your host, Meghan McDonough. I'm an intuitive, I'm an actor, creative, artist, mother, all the things. And my hope with this podcast is to give you some, hopefully, inspiration, some tools, and share some stories and insights, both personally and from interviews, that highlight how we can use our GPS system, our internal navigation system, more integrally, God, that was hard for me to say, in our lives. Basically, how do we use our intuition in our lives? What does that look like for other people? What does that look like for me? What can that look like for you? And why? Why would you need it? So that is the main topic today. Listen, I gotta tell you, I'm recording this on Sunday, September 14th, okay? In the US. And it's heated. It's so heated right now. And to the point where I had someone who I share political views with mistake something I posted it because I thought it was ridiculous, not commenting anything other than that. And I didn't even make a major, point of view on it. And they mistook it and got mad at me. And then they thought I was somebody else, right? And they were, blocked me or whatever. And I knew it was a misunderstanding. So I reconnected and we got over it. It was fine. And I'm not upset because it's just heated. And then I had another person get upset for my points of view, first of all assuming my points of view, and then getting upset for their assumption on my points of view, and then telling me that they need to speak their point of view, but conversely I can't speak mine. So there's a couple things I wanted to talk about today. One is, that's lie, 3. And the first one is, it doesn't matter what coat you put on anger, it is still anger. It doesn't matter what costume you put on paranoia, it's still paranoia. It doesn't matter what kind of disguise you give to separation, division, and hatred. They are all still separation, division, and hatred. They are. And that goes, again, that's at all political spectrums. And at the root of all of this is fear and anxiety and uncertainty. And whether you're for him or against him, I think the majority of us are feeling our president's chaos and inconsistency as a result. And how you want to box that up and label it for yourself to get through the day is whatever. I also think that there's something deeper at play. And I feel like that is, breath, literally, and the lack of it. But the lack of it is an extension from the way we're living. I remember reading when I was first kind of geeking out about yoga. Before I started taking classes, I kind of taught myself and was reading a lot of books. I wanted to learn about the history of it. I am a type of person that needs to know the why. If you tell me something's wrong, I need to know why. If you tell me something is bad for me, I need to know why. If I understand why, then I will understand it and I will do it. I mean, my son's the same way. It's really annoying, but that's the way it is. So, hence, when I started learning yoga, that's how I approached it. And one of the things I remember reading at some point was that traditionally, yoga was passed down from, guru to student, gurukul. And there's a couple reasons for this that don't translate to the modern yoga definition, especially in America. And a big one is ego. Because when you get a group of people together, whether you're a versed yogi or a novice, you can't help yourself but want to compete with your neighbor. I used to teach little kids how to swim, and the best way to get a kid to put his face in the water or to try something was some other kid doing it. And then they wanted to compete with them. So it's naturally in us. It's naturally in us to want to compete. And that is part of our ego. And our ego is a guardian of our fear and our anxiety. And the further away we get from nature, the higher our anxiety escalates, vibrates. What I was reading was when this teacher was saying to the student that they were afraid, or not afraid, but they were like warning about a big city in town where people lived on top of each other, like in buildings. So describing like an ancient apartment building and how that wasn't good for the spirit, really. Energy, you know. And so what that brought me to was, and also how I've been feeling lately. Like there is something in me that is just calling for a simpler life. One where, I mean, like when I was a kid, I always said I wanted to be like a farmer, but like for a week, you know, like it sounded like really awesome, but like not all the time, you know what I mean? Like if I could just do it for like a week and then tap out. But there's something about that holistic living, that knowing where your food came from and kind of creating food and meals and everything so that it has intention and meaning behind it, and that it's not just something to not give a second thought or respect. The smartest thing I've heard came from the right, and it was from the governor of Utah this week, and it was him saying to get off our devices. I know this is ironic, I'm doing a podcast. And to go like hug a tree, you know? We are both physical entities and energetic beings. And I do believe that the combination of those two things is what yoga strives to integrate. The separated and the universal oneness. Purush, Prakriti, spirit, body. You know? And in this podcast and in my readings and coaching, what I'm hoping to do is help us, whoever, as a humanity, to learn how to speak to and with the energetic side of ourselves, our soul self, the universal self, the self that that's infinite, that's not finite. Our physical selves are finite. Our infinite selves are our soul. And that's where the wisdom comes from. That's where the higher mind comes from. That's where, if we can communicate in that way with each other, would be glorious. But first we have to learn how to do it ourselves, right? And when you do that, all the BS goes away. All the BS goes away. Because a lot of the BS is just tied up in your ego, you know? I am not a fan of guns, like in any capacity, unless it's like shooting at a balloon to win a stuffed animal for my kids. Like, that's it. That's literally and it's like, you know, the tiniest BB or something small that cannot hurt anybody. Because to me, and this is something I felt all my life, there's nothing unviolent about a gun. There is no circumstance in which a gun is involved, but violence isn't. And the thing about, so I will never understand people who love their guns. I won't understand it. I mean, I can understand it as far as like, you loved a stuffed animal, but, you know, or a guitar, I guess, but it's totally different in my book because a guitar, you know, unless you're using it for something it's not meant to be used for, like hitting someone, you know? It's not a violent instrument. It's an instrument of a musical expression. It's an instrument of expression. So the further away we get from the earth and the more on top of each other we get, it's harder to hear that intuitive self because the earth and nature, they remind us to breathe. And the breath is the connection. It's the portal between, you know, physical self and soul self. And when you go out into nature, it's like you cannot help yourself but to breathe deep, slower, more fluid. when you see a beautiful sunset, you can't help yourself but to just calm. My yoga teacher would always say the body is to the breath as the breath is to the mind. So when our bodies are filled with tension and anxiety, our breath is limited and filled with tension and anxiety, and our minds are filled with tension and anxiety. And tension and anxiety and fear are all separators, meaning they put people away from each other because they're too afraid, right? Or too anxious. There's not a lot of connection that happens through fear, anxiety, especially hate, right? But when you connect to your breath, when you relax, when you go back to that kind of natural calm state, when you hug a tree, when you touch base with nature and breathe, you're reminded that we're all connected. And an attack on one of us is an attack on all of us. No matter the party, the politics, the person, it's gotten so divisive here. And it seems overwhelmingly daunting that we may not find a way out. We may not find our way peacefully to a better union. But one thing I do know is that we can take care of ourselves. And one tiny ripple in a pond can grow bigger and bigger and bigger. So one way of doing that is having a daily practice. A daily practice to what I call, and I like to, reference to, it's like plugging in, right? Like charging your battery. Plugging into the, whatever you want to call it, God, Purush, soul self, plugging into that energetic being part of you and filling up your cup so that you're coming from a calm place, from an aware place, from a connection place. And there are many ways to do that. So I call it ritual. And I'm not the only one, obviously. But having a ritual, having a weekly ritual, quarterly, yearly, daily ritual, to plug back into self, plug back into that higher version of you that seeks peace and connection and love and doesn't get distracted by the anxiety, fearful part. So this week I leave with you, breathe, get outside, especially in Chicago before it starts to get too cold, because we all know that's rough. Listen, thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing. And with anyone you think might really need this message today or feel connected to the material. I am offering, coming up this Sunday, the 21st, a virtual workshop called Create Ritual. In this workshop, we are going to go over kind of the history loosely of ritual, where it came from and why. Why is it important? I spoke to a little bit today about why it's important in our lives. But so we're going to speak about that, and we're going to create ritual together. And that will be my offering to you, and take and choose what resonates with you. And then we're going to share, because it's just really nice to connect in that way. So if you're interested, you can find me at Magnetize Your Light on all socials, info@magnetizeyourlight.com, or you can find the workshop information on my website underneath workshops, I believe it is, ironically. So I hope you have a wonderful week. I hope you breathe deep and calm and make some magic today.